kind of this weird.
Sorry.
Um,
Hold on.
no, you're good. You can always edit that out, right?
Yeah, I think okay. I wasn't recording. I got it to record now.
Oh, all right. You ready? Want to start
Yeah.
it?
Okay, let's
All right.
restart. Sorry. All right. Episode one, Two Bros Bruins podcast. All right. So we're gonna start off with like a season wrap up today. Talk a little bit about that. Then maybe get into
Sounds
some of
good.
the player quotes. Things that happened with Pasta and
Yeah,
McAvoy at the end of the
yeah.
season, and then we'll get into maybe what we think the Bruins should do in the draft and possibly
Sounds good.
maybe some trade moves. All right, so let's start
Yeah.
off again with how we think the Bruins did this year.
Well, I think if we're being honest, I think they exceeded expectations, right? Like, they had a little bit of an up and down at the beginning of the season, and then kind of got it together. I kind of felt like they were playing a system that didn't really match their personnel, um, but they were getting good goaltending and they were getting scoring. And at the beginning of the season, when teams weren't really that into their systems yet, the Bruins were right there, right? Like we watched them win games that maybe later in the year, we wouldn't think that they would win, but by that time, later in the season, they actually got the system down a little bit better. Again, not perfect. I don't like the system. We can talk about it another time, but
Yeah,
they
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of got it, right? They kind of got it, and they got good goaltending, and that makes
Well,
all the difference in the world. So we saw them win, more games than they lost, and honestly, I mean, if it wasn't for the fact that the Atlantic Division is so stacked, they probably should have been pretty easily in the top three, right? But the
oh yeah,
division's
I
just
mean,
so stacked.
you think about even those early in the season where they had those streaks of losing the 6 or 7 games in a row. Like if they would have just pulled out even a overtime loss in a couple of those, we could make a difference of
Right,
where we were at the end of the season, right? Just by a few points
right,
could have made a big
right,
difference. You
right.
know, we might
But
not
the
have been
crazy
playing
thing
Buffalo.
is, well, but again, you're whoever you're playing, it was going to be a good Atlantic team. So,
Yeah, that's
it
true.
is what it
And
is.
Atlantic.
I mean, to be honest, I mean, I kind of thought that Montreal would be good. Um, Buffalo should have been good last year, and they just couldn't figure it out. And this year, all of a sudden, they seem to figure it out, right? Like their general manager came down to the room, said, "Lindy Ruff ain't going anywhere, so
Yeah,
get your head out of us." And then all of a sudden, they went on a run. They were the best team in the league, right? Like,
yeah,
um,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
we can talk about the playoffs in a little bit, but you know, they went on a run. Tampa's Tampa, right? Like they have enough star power, great goaltending, depth. They were going to be all right. Florida,
Yeah, there was
Florida just had too many, right? Like, and this is sad thing. Florida's still going to be a good team
immediately
next year. Too
the
many
what's his
injuries.
name?
They couldn't.
Their superstar player was out before the season started, right? In Florida. So
Right.
so Barkov
Barkov got
was
hurt
done.
preseason, and he was done, right? And
Yeah.
that, and then Kachuk. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
He
honestly,
was hurt too.
if it wasn't for Marchand kind of carrying them for a
Yep.
while,
Well,
you know,
until they decided that they wanted to get their pick back, then they were like, "Oh, Marchand's hurt. Come on, he
can you
was fine the
hold
whole
on?
season."
Can you blame them? They just went
No.
on three runs to the Stanley Cup Finals and won two of them. So,
Yeah.
right, like,
Right.
hey, I think if we were Panthers fans, we'd be pretty happy that, yeah,
So
fuck
my
it, right?
question is though, if it wasn't for like say Florida having the problems they had before the season started with the injuries, would we have even been in the playoffs this year?
I
Like,
it
would
would
we have and
be
Toronto collapsing the way Toronto collapsed it, would we even be in the play? I know everybody's talking we did 100 points. That's great. But if Toronto didn't collapse, right, and Florida didn't collapse, would we have made it even in the wild card? Because we were on the edge. We almost,
right,
I don't know
right.
if we would have. I so people say the season was good, and it wasn't bad, but Swayman bailed us out a lot.
I
You know,
agree. I agree. What a difference a year makes, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. From
Uh,
last year, we hated him, and we needed to go. I
well,
mean,
I even feel like his attitude kind of
oh
changed.
yeah,
Like
definitely.
he was a little cocky 2 years ago when he got his contract, and it carried over to the season. Right, he held out. He was being cocky. I don't think it endeared him to the room. And this year, I think he just came into camp. He shut his mouth, and everybody seemed to be okay. Right?
Yeah,
That's
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah,
how
you didn't
things
hear
went.
the Jeremy Swayman third person talking on the during press conferences,
And
you know.
what a difference, right?
During the
But
media
but
scrums or
here's
whatever
what
they're
we
called.
did see. But here's what we did see from him. He started to be more of a leader through his actions. And instead of being a little punk, he was actually acting like a mature guy who
Yeah.
wanted to be there, right? Like he gave a shit. And instead
Yeah.
of Zadorov saying things like, "Oh, is that what he was doing back
Yeah,
there?"
I loved it.
They they
Yeah.
seem to actually like go, "All right, he's trying to be one of us. We'll play for him again." And
Yeah.
that's kind of how it went. And then we saw in the playoffs, right? Like you can see he's competitive, right?
Oh
He
yeah.
wants to.
Yeah.
That's not a bad thing. I think
Nope.
that's
Nope.
one of the things that's going to make him, like the rock that this team can be built off of. And then you have to build from the middle, right? They have him. They have the pieces on defense. I mean, they need some depth there on the right
Well, and
side, but
honestly, his contract, his $8 million, doesn't seem so bad right now, does it? You know, you're like, oh,
no,
okay,
no,
this is what you get
no.
for 8 million. I'm okay with that.
Agreed. Agreed, right? Like
You
when
know?
you get right, because honestly, like he's just as good, maybe not as good as Shesterkin, but Shesterkin's
He's up
11
there.
plus million
Yes,
dollars, right?
yeah,
Like,
he's
so
up
you're
there.
doing okay,
I
right?
put I put
And
him in the top 3 or 4 guys in the NHL goalies.
oh,
Yeah, you
yeah,
know what I mean.
agreed, agreed, agreed. So, you know, you're getting what you should have out of him, and that's all you can ask for. And I like the fact that he was being a leader, even when he yelled at the bench,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
but
I feel
that's being
like he was like,
competitive.
"Hey
That's not.
guys, no, I'm with you." It was like, "Hey, bring the same level of compete that I'm bringing, please." Like,
Yeah,
right? Like, I think that's all he was asking. I think that's why
yeah, yeah.
Costa was so upset at the end of the season is that I think he felt like management let them down. Like, hey, we're giving it everything we have, but we got too many passengers, right? Like,
Right.
you can't bring in a guy for $7.5 million who can skate at an elite level, yet we
Well,
rarely,
So,
if
so
ever,
let
have seen
let
that guy skate that way,
let
right?
let's go. Let before we go into that because there's a lot to discuss
Yeah,
about when we're talking
fair,
about
fair,
the. Let's
right.
just
Let's
wrap it
get
up
back
about
on
the
track, right?
season.
Yeah,
Is that
yeah,
is
yeah.
that they did better than expected, but I don't
Yep.
know if they would have done this well if those other two teams would have been in the mix actually playing the
I,
Panthers and Toronto. I
I
don't know
agree.
if they would have got to 100 points. I don't even know if they would have made the playoffs. They might have been on just outside the wild card, or they may have got to where Ottawa was. Right? They might have been in
Right.
Carolina and got
That's a
wiped
good.
out. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
Um,
Right.
but all in all, I was a better season than last year. Some people
Yes.
stepped up, like Swayman. I mean, who would have thought Arvidsson would have done as well as Arvidsson did?
Right.
You know,
Right.
the second
Well,
line was great, right?
right. So that I think that was all lined up to be successful, though, is because Arvidsson has always brought the effort and the
Hmm.
energy and the skating, right? And he has a knack for being a volume shooter. And
Yeah.
then you have Zaka, who is a very competent 200-foot guy who, while he doesn't get a lot of credit for being creative, he is creative. He's not David Krejci, and I think people who expect
Oh
that
yeah, yeah.
is
No, he's not.
probably like often. But with Middlestat, remember, here's what changed. Uh, Sturm benched Middlestat like
Yep.
7, 8 games in,
Yep.
and when he brought him back in the lineup, Middlestat did one thing: he competed his
Worked.
ass off.
Yep.
He
Yep.
stopped. He stopped being lazy and trying to cheat the game because he has a lot of skill. We didn't really see all that skill all the time, but what he realizes is I have to just give effort and compete hard, and the rest of it will take care of itself. And what a difference it made, right? Now all of a
Yep.
sudden, that whole line had all the pieces they needed to be successful. They went to the dirty areas. They got lots of shots. They had a huge shot share, right? Like if you look at their metrics, they were way above goals
Oh
expected,
man, it's
right?
amazing.
And
Yeah.
their shot share was absolutely elite. And I think that says a lot about it. Now, will that come down to earth next season if they re-sign Arvidsson? I don't know. Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe. But honestly, if the Bruins were to go out and get a number one seed
Well.
to
Yeah. Well.
play with Pasta,
Right.
if that just does even more for that second line. And that second line,
Right.
then it gets to feast on second and third pair defensemen and
Okay.
But again, we could talk about the Arvidsson thing
Right.
afterwards. But yes,
Right. So
that
let's
line carried this team when they needed it, right? That's the other
So
thing that
to,
was way above expected was that line,
of
right? You never
course,
thought that
no, no,
Arvidsson
no,
was
no,
going to
no,
score 25, that
no.
Zucker was going to be a 30-30
30
guy,
goals,
right?
yeah,
Like,
30-30, and I think Middlestat did 20 goals too, right? I'm pretty
no,
sure.
I think it was 14 or 15
Was it
goals, right?
14 or
15, I
15? Let's
think,
go take
but
a look.
still 15 goals,
I
right?
thought he did 20.
And
Let me see.
no,
Casey
no, no,
Middlestat.
no, no. I think he got to 15. I'm pretty sure it was 15. Still, that's a win, right? That's a huge win. And not just that, it carried over to the playoffs. I bet you every team that ever had Casey Middlestat was like, where the heck was all
Oh,
this?
okay. Yeah, 15 goals, 27 assists, 42 points. Still really good for him.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great like, and again, it was not just the stats, but it was how he played, and he was a plus player.
Oh,
How about
and then
that?
yeah, well, yeah, but then you also had the fourth line this year. Let's honestly between with
Right,
Kastelik
right,
and Tanner Janot, which again we'll talk about
right.
uh,
Yeah,
contracts and stuff after. But like, and even Corrali at times, I know he kind of was a. Sometimes I felt like
right.
he wasn't doing enough, but them two, that whole line, I think they had
Well,
almost everybody had 10 goals except I
right,
think Janot might have been at like 9, but he was close.
right.
Casty, I believe, had 10 or 11. Um, I mean, that's great for your fourth line, and they wore teams down with that fourth line. That fourth line
Well,
was
but
good.
but here's what that fourth line had that a lot of fourth lines don't have is
Speed,
they're all elite skaters. Corrali, people forget Corrali was a first round draft pick. He
yeah.
had skill in skating. That was what he was drafted in the first round for. He made himself into a third, fourth liner that can check, right? Now, was he consistent all season long? No. But Janot and Kastelik, they played far beyond. Remember, they
Oh
were
yeah.
killing penalties, and
Yep.
they
Yeah.
they
Penalty killing
actually
too.
tried them on the third line. And I think what
Yeah. At the
happened
beginning of the
was they
season.
realized those guys are an effective fourth line because they're not afraid to give them 15 minutes a game,
Yep.
right? So what happens? Corrali would get about 11, Kastelik and Janot because they kill penalties right around 14, 15 a game. That's what killed a lot of teams. They were not expecting those guys to be as fast. So when they forechecked, they were on and it was heavy, right? If
Oh
the Bruins
yeah.
had maybe just had a third line like that, and here's the thing, and I'm not trying to detract, we'll talk about Fraser Mitten, but Fraser can also skate. Husnudinov can also skate, right? Like
Oh
they
yeah.
have some
Usti can.
guys,
Marat can skate, dude. Marat's got
right?
moves, and he. Yeah.
Right, but you can't then throw out an Isamont and a Steves who are
I know,
not
Mike.
elite
I
level
mean, this is
skaters, right? Like,
this is where I think the season had its
right,
problems, is
right,
because I like Isamont for what he is, and
right.
Steve's I'm not a fan of. I think he had a
But
good stretch, and then that's about all he is. But
right, right. So,
he's
anyways,
inconsistent.
getting back, right. So, getting back to like the season,
Hmm.
and where they were and the expectations. Like, I think we saw how they morphed into, that's what they started to settle on is okay, we're gonna have our fourth line be the
Right.
forecheck line. We'll have our young guys on the third line, right? Trying to generate some energy and just kind of kill some minutes, right? And whatever
Yeah.
offense they provide is a bonus. Then you had your second line, which was really generating a lot of offense. And your first line, I mean, Pasta. I think at the beginning of the season when the power play was going, he was kind of getting his points, not really scoring, right? And
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
we saw Geeky struggle, right? He started to score. Pasta goes out. He actually looked like he was going to carry the offense. And then somewhere along the line, when he started playing with Elias by himself, and Elias Lindholm is not a very creative guy. He's a
No,
he
not
can
at all.
he can skate at an elite level, although we didn't see him skate at an elite level much this year. And he
Mm.
has talent. He's just not very creative. So he was not the guy to do what Pasta does when he sets up uh uh Geeky for these scoring chances. And then we saw Geeky for who he really is. He is not a confident pure goal scorer. You know what I mean? Like he gets by on a above average shot, an elite shot, but he
Well,
can't
there
he
was
can't put it
times.
in the ocean if it's
Yeah,
not
I was
on
gonna
his
say there
tape.
was times he couldn't even hit an open net or close to an open net.
Right. And that's what I think. That's when, and then what happens is when he starts missing those consistently, and it's not, tap ins or easy chances
Yeah.
that he can just use his shot to beat the goalie, his confidence goes down. Sturm kind of got on him a little bit. Then
Yeah,
he
probably
drops him down
frustrates
to the
Pasta
third
too.
line.
So,
Right. It dropped him down to a third line. Pasta comes back, and now he's got to try to get Geeky's confidence back. And it was like now it was Operation Find Geeky's, goal scoring again.
Yeah. It was. Yeah.
And if it wasn't for the second line, this team doesn't win many games during that stretch. Finally, Pasta got Geeky scoring again, like in the last 15, 20 games of the season, right? And then
Yeah.
suddenly we saw like a small resurgence of Elias Lindholm. Like again, when Sturm demoted him and pretty much gave him the business, all of a sudden
Yeah.
we're thinking that they might actually like bench this guy. He may end up in the stands, right? All of a sudden he decides to show up for a couple of weeks, right? Wasn't that interesting?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
again, I
Yeah.
think it was those things. It was those things that kind of carried them. How about the fact that Corpusalo after the Olympics showed up
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
showed out,
Corby
right?
played much, much better. Yeah.
Right, because that allowed Swayman to kind of just be Swayman and not have to get overextended. Even this year, we saw when they played him 3 games, like
He
that was too
doesn't do
much.
3 games. That's
He,
that's
he,
been shown in his
yeah,
entire career. 3 games in a
right,
row is a no go for Swayman.
right,
All right, but I can live with that. If you could get a
same,
decent
same,
amount from your backup goaltender, now we'll
right,
talk about this later because I think 3.5 million or whatever they're paying Corpy somewhere around there. I think
right,
it's too much, but
right.
when he at least as long as you can get some decent backup goaltending, Swayman's on fire. He's good. He holds his
Agreed,
own.
agreed.
There's nothing wrong
You
with him.
keep you keep Swayman around 55 games, 50,
Yeah.
55 games. I think he's golden, right?
Hmm.
We saw in the playoffs. He looked fine in the
He
playoffs.
showed it with Olmark for 2 years when he was
Yeah,
playing
if
with
the
Olmark.
Bruins, right, if the Bruins could just actually, uh, scored a few on the power play, or even got a couple of power play chances in the last few games, maybe
Oh
that's a
yeah,
difference.
yeah.
We'll talk about that another time. All right, so where do we what do we want to go to next? Now that we've kind of
I
talked about
okay.
the
So
season.
we're gonna go into let's talk about the exit day or right around exit day after the last Buffalo game, and
Yeah,
what what we're hearing or what way we felt like what we were hearing from some of the players, and then we'll get
yeah,
into what kind of moves and stuff like that they should be doing. But
yeah,
I with Pasta saying to the media that he's turning 30 and he realizes he don't got a lot much time here, a lot much more time, left.
right,
That he wants to get he cop. Basically, that's the way I felt. And again, this is all my opinion, but it felt to me the
right,
way he was saying was, I only got a few more years, do something for me. And he asked, and it was they said in the press conference before the trade deadline, they asked
right,
Sweeney, what do you feel about Geeky and Pasta's comments? Everybody glosses over where they said Pasta because his return response was, "Well, I would tell Geeky that I had offers for him and I didn't trade him away." He didn't say that about
right,
Pasta though. He didn't
right,
go, "Hey, Pasta," He
right,
kind of like, let's get away from Pasta talk here. Let's just talk about
right,
Geeky. Pasta
right,
definitely seems upset that they didn't do anything for him in the trade deadline, and he was
right,
doing all the work himself. And then another interview not too
right.
long before that, he said, um, what was it
Yeah,
exactly? He said, oh, that the system. What the way they play this year because they was asking him about, is he going to get his goal scoring back? And he said, well, the way
right,
they were supposed to, we're playing this year, I'm a playmaker. He said that's what
right,
they wanted me to do this year, and it's to me, he sounds unhappy. Let's just talk about
right.
Pasta first, and then we'll go into the McAvoy thing. But
Okay, well, let's talk about Pasta. Okay, this season, I again, like you kind of knew without a true number one center, without a creative center, like here's what people forget. When he was playing on the perfection line with Bergeron and Marchand, uh, people don't maybe realize just how elite that 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 Patrice thinks the game, and that when a world class player, when Pasta or even Marchand starts a play, it doesn't just die on the vine because Patrice knew exactly what they were doing, what they were trying to do, and he was able to bridge that right to the next play.
yeah,
Whereas
yeah,
it seemed to me like Lindholm was not that guy for Pasta. And honestly,
mhm.
like had the Bruins been smart, they should have just plugged Patra in there early in the season when if you
And see
lost
no,
games, it's not the
I
end of the
know.
world, and see what happens. Patra, anybody who ever watches Patra would tell you this kid thinks the game offensively at a different level.
Okay, so
Right?
we're back to
But
so
let's go back. Hold on.
Pasta's
Right. So,
comments
so
though. We'll get into the
right. So hold on, let me get to that. So I think what happened is because now Pasta, he not only has to be the guy who starts it, because in those days he used to get the puck to Marchand, or
Right.
most of the work was done by Patrice and Brad, right?
Yeah.
And then Pasta just got to float around the zone, get to his spot, right, to be the trigger man. And
Right.
now
They get
all of
him
a
the puck.
sudden, right now, all of a sudden, he's got to do all of it and not just create the play. Now he's got to be the zone entry guy. He's got to carry it in, right? Like he's got to do all the work, and then he's got to put it on a tee, or Elias and Morgan aren't going to put it home, right? And I
Mhm.
think that got frustrating. And we saw just how elite Pasta really is. Like, I mean, we knew the guy thinks the game and sees the game at an elite level, but I think we saw this year, he literally made two guys that can't put it in the ocean. One, he almost made a 40 goal scorer, who I think Morgan anywhere else is a 20 goal scorer at best. He
Yeah.
literally made
Yeah.
this guy almost a 40 goal scorer. And honestly, Geeky should be giving him like 20% of his salary should be going to Pasta, right? Like set up a college fund for his kid or something, because Jesus Christ, dude, this guy got you paid. And I think he got frustrated. I think he got frustrated because I think he looked around and he saw the success that his friend, Pavel Zacha's having with the other two guys that he's playing with, and I think he felt like, why can't I have that? I'm your star player, and you are giving me nothing to work at with. And
I agree.
he, I think he went above and beyond during the summer last year to tell them, hey, there's a few guys, a few Czech guys, like, I don't
Well, that
know, this
Matej,
guy that,
about Matej, right? Matej Blumel.
well,
Yeah.
there was also Neshkash, who
Oh yeah,
actually
Neshcast. I forgot.
wasn't.
Yep.
I mean, he wasn't exactly solidified over there in Colorado. They
Yep.
could have maybe
Not
swung
that
a
time.
deal. Now that ain't happening. That
No.
kid's about as locked in as Colorado is going to get, because
Yep.
he's a big piece. And
Neshcast
but
is
they could
fast.
have.
God, that kid's fast.
And they've played together. And I think he talked Blumel into signing with Boston, thinking they would give him a shot.
Hmm.
Stern played him a couple of games during the preseason, and let him play a couple of
I know.
games and then that was it, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't think he ever let anything develop.
So
And that
part of,
and
so
I
you're
I
saying
think we
part of
saw
this
Blumel.
frustration is because he was asking and he's trying to get something going, but they're just not.
Right. Right. And again, you're talking about a guy who was kind of spoiled the first few years in his career. People want
Look
to
what
talk
he had to
about,
play with.
well, no, and no, being honest, think about this, right? When he came up after being down in Providence with Cassidy, and then he's in
Yeah.
Boston for what, a half a season, and then
Yeah.
Cassidy takes over.
Cassidy comes up.
And
Yep.
Cassidy didn't put him on the third line or the fourth
No,
line.
well,
He puts him out there on the first line with David Krejci. Of course,
oh,
David's
yeah,
going to make
David
mistakes.
Krejci's an amazing playmaker too.
Pasternak's going to make mistakes. But here's the other thing. Uh, Cassidy never crucified Pasta for making the mistakes.
Yeah.
You know what he asked him to do? He asked him to compete. Now, if you don't compete, well, that's a problem. But here's the thing. He was okay with the mistakes. He was not okay with not competing. And that's what Pasta learned. He watched Patrice. Everybody talks about Brad Marchand and, oh, Brad's this great two-way player. Here's the thing. Brad was not a great two-way player when he first started.
Yeah.
He became one. But you know what else? Like, even Claude Julien. And again, people said Claude wasn't good with the young guys. Yes, he was. But all he asked was go out and compete. And what's the one thing that Marchand had? He didn't have size. He didn't have maybe the
Oh,
hardest
but
shot, though he's a good goal scorer.
compete.
He went
He
out.
Marchand competes to the death. To the death.
And that's it. And dude, and that's it, right? And that's
Yeah.
it. And I think and then we can talk about this later when we talk about like development stuff, but
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing missing in this organization right now when it comes to development is they're so wrapped up in this. Can he play defense? Can he stop it? Get them to play as hard as they can every shift, right? You can work on the other stuff, right? Like I will say this, I'll give Morgan Geeky a lot of credit because he came into the league, right? He was an offensive guy in junior, and he learned how to compete and be in everything, right? Like, hey, if they want me to play on the fourth line, I'm going to go out there and just give it all, right? I'm going to
Yeah.
be
Yeah. Yeah.
be a dog out there on the puck. And honestly, when he has success, and we saw it last year, he wasn't having success because he thought he was a goal scorer, right? And then all of a sudden, he buckled down and just went back to just winning
He went
pucks in
back to right
corners and
doing what he
getting
was
them to
doing.
Pasta. And then
Yeah.
Pasta found him in areas where he could shoot the puck. Same thing this year, right? And I think that's when he figures out, hey, I just need to do the little things and compete my ass off and get the puck to the guys who can do the magical things with it,
Okay.
and
All
then
right.
just get the
So
spot where I can shoot.
right, right,
Right,
right. But with the
right.
pasta thing. So basically, what we're both saying is that he's frustrated because they didn't give him the right tools to work
He
with him.
wants,
Right?
let's be honest, he wants a centerman that can create, and then he can go back to just finding those holes in the
Yeah.
defense and just firing pucks home, right? And
Okay.
that's what he does. He's a world class at it, right? He's
But
one of the best ever at it.
okay, but yeah, so yeah, but that's what the problem is. We think, anyways, that his problem is that he's not. Not putting him in a situation to be as productive as he should be, right? I mean, he's putting up
Oh,
100
hold
points,
on.
but he's not.
Right. And here's the other thing. He got to watch Higgins every day in practice.
Hmm.
And here's this kid, they put him beside his locker beside him, and they
There, yeah,
wouldn't
that's
put
right.
him up there with him.
Yeah, I wonder if
I
that was a little
think,
frustrating for him. Why
well,
not?
he
Like, we got a
said
playmaker.
not so much that. It was like, I think he watched this guy with all this talent and vision and creativity and said, you know what? I can work with this kid. I can work with this kid. And I think he just
Hmm.
wanted them to give him a chance. And I think he got a little upset because I don't think he believes, I'm not trying to hurt Stern's feelings. I don't think Pasta believes in that system. I know
We,
for a fact Charlie
we're
didn't believe in the
we're
system
gonna get into that
and
in the
it hurt
Charlie
them.
conversation, but
But yeah, I think that's where I think he was very frustrated, right? Now, do I
mhm.
think he wants out? In that moment, I bet you money he was so frustrated he was probably wishing.
Well, so
But I
that's
think
the
as the
other
summer
rumors.
goes on,
Is that
I
the other
think
rumors
we can
are
talk him
that
into to
so
calming down a little bit, and they
yeah.
go out. If they can make a move, let's say whatever that happens to be. If it's Robert Thomas, the moon's the you know what I mean. It's
Yeah,
the
I
moon and
think
all
that
that,
makes him
right?
happy. I think that makes everybody happy if they can go get Robert Thomas. But that's after the
Right.
next. But so
But that's here or there, right?
right. So, but
But right,
we're both looking at it as that
right,
he's. It sounds like, anyways, to our opinions and what we've seen is that
right,
Pasta's a little miffed, so to say, that they didn't give him much to work with, and
right.
people, the kind of people are still kind of putting a lot on him. I see a lot of media like, oh, you only scored 29 goals. The guy put up
How
100
do
points on a
right,
mediocre team. On a mediocre team, how many guys have put up 100 points? How many guys
right,
in the whole
right,
league?
and
How many guys?
right. And I'll tell you this right now, and you can tell from watching the games that Pasta's, and again, Pasta is never going to be confused for Selke Trophy finalist, right?
No, 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 no,
But
no. But it doesn't
but
matter. He's still putting up 100
here's
points.
what was missing.
It
Here's
doesn't
what was
matter.
missing. But in the old days when they played more of a, for lack of, because I don't want to get too in depth in the technical, but in
Mhm.
the older days in Cassidy and Claude, they played a kind of a box in one style. So you're not running around the zone. And when you get full possession, he could leave the zone and expect to get a puck in the neutral zone or to get deep, right? The puck's going to get deep and he's going to get offensive time. The problem was he was running around in his own end wearing himself out. That by the time they got possession,
Uh,
he's got nothing left in the
Nothing.
tank, right?
So, okay.
That's another
So,
reason why he was
what's
frustrated. You could see
what's
it.
what's your right now, as it states right now? Do you think that because okay, so before we ask this question, that there's been no reports that they've talked to Pasta yet. I've been looking and scouring the internet, messaging contact, nothing, no
Yeah,
reports there's
yeah,
reports that he didn't even go to exit day,
yeah,
um, and or at least not that same day. He might have gone the
yeah,
next day or whatever.
yeah.
Um, and do you think at this point right now is he saying I want out, or is he just on the fence, or was he just mad that day? Out of those three options, what do you think it is?
I I think it was an emotional response to what had happened all season, and he finally let it out. I think that with what's going on right now, I think there was probably a good reason why he didn't go to exit day, and it was probably
Mhm.
the emotions are still probably there, and I think there maybe part of this was his agent. You got to know that his agent has already talked to
Yeah, yeah.
Sweeney. Or Sweeney reached out when he said those things and said, "Hey, like is everything okay?" Because and I think what's happening right now is they are giving it a time, some time to just let it lie, right? Let it cool off a bit. Let everybody's emotions kind of come down, and it's probably for the best, right?
No.
And I think that they have probably told his agent, hey, look, we're going to do everything we can to give him somebody else to play with, right? And and I believe it. I think because let's be honest, without him, they do not make the playoffs. And without
That don't do
Charlie,
nothing.
they are right. And the
Well, let's
and
segment that into the Charlie conversation
okay,
because Charlie, from reports again, didn't go to exit day. Charlie
yeah,
was how do you call it?
yeah, yeah.
Visibly mad
He
after
was
last game with
frustrated.
Buffalo,
Upset.
and
Yeah,
he was. They heard
yeah,
people heard him screaming and
yeah,
yelling as he was
yeah,
leaving. That he didn't.
yeah,
They asked him about the suspension. He's like, "What do I
yeah.
care? I'm not playing anymore." Right.
Right,
So,
right,
um,
right.
and then there's been
I'm
reports that
worried.
he's upset with management,
Yeah,
that nobody's kind of defended him
yeah,
over the slash. Now
yeah,
I understand that
yeah.
he should the two-handed slash Benson, but Benson slew-footed him and the whole world could see it, and then they didn't do
Right.
anything about it.
Exactly.
So
Right.
I know
Right.
that makes him mad, but
Right.
as me and you have discussed
He got up. Hold
previously,
on. He got up, saw that one, nobody went after Benson. The referee didn't have his arm in the air, and he was had enough. He's like, okay, I've had enough of being a target. F you.
mhm,
And now I honestly feel like we saw it. He was frustrated with Sturm's system from the very beginning. He was unhappy that he was paired with Lowry and had
yeah,
to carry Lowry in the beginning of the season when he didn't like the system, and now he's got
right,
to carry a guy, right? And
yeah,
I honestly think the best thing that happened to him was going away to the Olympics, getting to be with his boys that he had played with,
his
coming up
father-in-law
through the U.S. Well,
and his
that too,
father-in-law,
but all
yeah,
those guys that he played with through USA Hockey since he was a teenager, he got the game to be fun for him
yeah.
again. And I think you're right. I think his father-in-law told him, "Hey man, go back to Boston. You know, go play your game, right? Have the right attitude. Things are going to work out.
Oh, he one of the
You're
best years of his
okay."
best years of his
And
career.
he came back, looked like a completely different guy, right?
Yeah, with his
Looked
face
like
smashed
the
in.
world, right? With it,
Amazing.
looked like the world class defenseman that we had all knew
Yeah,
he could be, right? Like I would say,
yeah.
he played some of
Showed
his best hockey, right?
why
Not
he's considered elite defenseman for sure,
agreed,
for sure.
right? But here's also what happened along the way. He still got targeted a few times,
Oh yeah,
and
the
we
elbow.
didn't see the response. And
Nope.
I think the fact that the Bruins management didn't go to bat for him with the league, like not even come out publicly and said, "Hey, you know what? Charlie's our guy. Screw that, the Buffalo player. This is unacceptable." Blah blah blah. Nothing. Nothing. And here they talk about piss and vinegar. Yet, where was the piss and vinegar when you're essentially
See
that
that
guy? Without that guy, you are nothing. And
well
I'm
the
not
only
trying to
thing.
sure. I'm not trying to, overhype this. But the reality is he, as a defenseman on that defense core, like I love Hampus. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, yeah.
He's
Hampus
been
when
hurt,
he's
and
healthy, he's
Hampus,
amazing.
when he's elite. Those two guys together are your anchor.
Yeah,
No disrespect to Zadorov and whatever,
yeah.
but
Everybody else. Yeah.
he's a third pairing
Well,
guy on a good team. But
I
without
get it. I
Charlie, this
agree
team is no good.
100%. On the ice at the time, Zadorov wasn't out there. Neither was Cassidy.
No,
Neither
and
was
again, I'm
Janot. And
not
I
trying.
wonder if any of
Right.
them would have been out there at the time.
I'm
Things might have been a little
right.
different. But I think the biggest problem is the management not backing him after the fact, not coming out and
I
saying, "Hey,
agree.
this was wrong. They didn't
Yeah,
call anything." Hey,
yeah.
why not just say, "Hey, why didn't they call anything on Benson for the slew for it
Well,
that
well,
everybody saw?
right, right,
Everybody saw it, man."
right,
I mean,
right, right. Well, let's be honest, right? The Bruins management, you know, they take it, in the backside for old
yeah,
Gary
okay,
Bettman,
yeah, right.
and let's be honest about it, right? They do not let's be really honest. The only time this ownership ever did anything for this club is when people stopped showing up back in
Well, I said that.
2004,
Yeah,
and then they ran out, hired Shirelli, signed a bunch of free agents, and honestly, it was Jeff Gorton, not even Shirelli, that actually
yeah,
set the
yeah.
team up
What
to
was the
win. But
Zadorov
whatever,
year?
we'll
What year was
Shirelli,
Zadorov?
Shirelli's the idiot who traded Blake Wheeler. I mean, yeah, Wheeler away, and
Yeah,
that wouldn't have made a difference. But we can get into that another time.
right.
Um,
But so
but
okay, so at this
that's the
point,
reason
and
why
I,
this ownership ever did anything for this team, and they weren't going to go to bat. Gary Bettman does not fear the Bruins ownership.
uh,
Look what happens with Vegas. Does
oh yeah,
he
yeah.
ever push back on Vegas?
No,
It
or the
took the
Panthers.
board.
Let the Panthers
It
do.
took
But
it
okay,
took, hold on, no, slow down. It
okay,
took all of the general managers to say, wait a minute, them hiding salary during the season on
Yeah,
injured
yeah, yeah.
reserve so they could bring them back for the playoffs.
I
And
mean, that
that's
was
enough.
like the run on the running joke for a couple of years,
Yeah,
though.
but
Like
then, yeah, but the
the
league didn't
Vegas
do anything
always
about
gets
it.
everybody under the cap
It took
somehow for the
right,
playoffs.
but it yeah, but it took 30 other general managers to
Yeah,
go and complain about it before it ever got because that owner would have told Gary to go pound sand and he would have fought for his team. Our ownership has never fought for the Bruins. It's absolutely, you know how
and
I feel about it.
I agree. But
But moving on,
so at this
moving
point,
on.
we're gonna go back to
I'm
the same
worried.
question I asked
I'm
you about.
worried that
Okay,
Charlie's done.
okay,
I'm worried that
let's.
Charlie's done. I think
So
he
what?
wants out,
All right.
and I think he's done.
Okay, so at
And
this
now
point,
it's a
I'm going
matter
to
of
go
you
back
got,
to the question.
yeah.
The question I asked you about Pasta, was that emotional at the time? What do you think he is, or like absolutely considering not coming back, or do you think he's already made his decision? Out of one of those three, what do you think it is?
I don't know. I can't, well, obviously, I don't know the guy well enough to
Right,
know
right.
that he made his
I'm
decision,
guessing. I'm
but
saying
but
make it a guess. What do you
I
think?
think. My honest opinion is I think that he is 1 foot out the door right now, and
That's where I'm at.
it
I
would
think
take because he has.
he's
Think about
kind of
it.
making a decision right now what he wants to
He
do.
has no. He has all the guys that he came up with. All the guys that were there when he broke in are all gone. The only
Yeah,
person left was Pasta, and and I feel like even him and Pasta, while they are close, Pasta was in his wedding.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
feel like I feel like there was still a disconnect there because they made those two guys the captains, yet I don't feel like they listened to
Assistant
Charlie at
captains. Yeah,
all. And
yeah.
I think they don't. And I didn't feel like, because you could see it. Charlie was very upset at the beginning of the season. He was very disinterested. He didn't
Yeah.
like the system. You could
Yep.
just tell.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that doesn't look to me like a guy who wanted to be there from the very beginning, right?
Hmm.
And here's the thing. He wanted his father-in-law to get hired, right?
I think
Because
so too. I really think so. But
oh,
again, this is
oh,
all
absolutely.
speculation. But there was reports that Sullivan was like, he went to the meeting. It was like, nah,
Oh,
no
I
thanks. I
oh, I
mean,
can tell you right now from people who are on the inside have said that it was the conversation with Sweeney is that turned Mike Sullivan off. Because I think he felt like Don Sweeney all the time has to be the smartest guy in the room and doesn't take input from the coach,
yeah.
right? And I honestly feel like you thought he would have learned his lesson from when he hired Montgomery and then realized he didn't like him. Like he hired the guy and then realized I don't like this guy, and then it became a really bad relationship. And so I think what happened at the beginning of the season with Sturm, you saw Sturm get frustrated over the personnel, and then Donnie backed off. And then I
Yeah.
think that's why we saw Reichel.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
saw
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
got a
Why
Reichel
Reichel?
signing is
Yep.
because he. I think Sturm is right. Reichel has speed. He needs guys with speed. He needs
Right.
guys who can skate. So Donnie threw him a bone. And then what Donnie also did was he signed Steves and Sturm in protest stopped playing him right after that. Like you could see it. Like I felt bad for Steves. Not that I thought Steves was anything great, but
Right.
he was the kid earned his spot at the beginning of the season by just working his
Well.
ass off, right? He was a third line guy. And all of a sudden
Okay.
he got pushed up to the second line or first line, I think it was when Pasta was out hurt, and he contributed. He was scoring, right? But the
Okay.
reason why he
So.
was scoring is because all of a sudden Morgan Geeky had carried over the confidence that he had, and they were generating offense. The two of those two guys, forget Elias, because Elias was absolutely useless in that
Right. Right. Right.
stretch.
Right. Right.
It was those two guys. And then all of a sudden, when Pasta came back, what happens to Steve's? He got dropped down,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
now he's playing in a role that he thought, because I'm guessing the coach told him, I just need you to go in there and grind and be that kind of guy.
Oh,
And then he got some. No, let me finish. He got some
all right.
chances, and as soon as he didn't bury those chances, Sturm took that as great. Now I can take you out of the lineup, and I don't have to worry about blowback from Sweeney anymore. And that's exactly what happened. And we never saw him
Yeah.
again. And then he got to put his guy in, Isamont, who's not that he's useless. He competes hard, but he's a fourth line guy. And
Right.
you needed more talent, and they didn't get it.
Okay.
Let's be
Well,
honest.
I mean, I can't disagree with anything you're saying there. I don't see. I think there was other moves that you could have made that made more of an impact by
On
between Steve's
on
and
whose side?
Isamont.
On whose side? On whose
I
side? The
think by
coach's
bringing
side or
up
the?
Patra, to bring in Patra up would have been
Oh,
more of a made more of a difference than who cares what Steve's did or using Itzema.
but
I
I
think
think,
bringing up Patra would have made more of a difference in his team
but,
this year. But
but
let's
slow
get
your roll.
back
Hold
to
on,
where
slow your roll on that. But
okay.
slow your roll on that because think about this. He brought Merkelov up, okay, prior to
Yeah.
that. Listen to me. He brought Merkelov up prior to that. And what did Sturm do to Merkelov? He played one shift and
He
never
played.
played.
I think they said that he played a total of 8 minutes or something like that. It
No,
was
no,
really.
he didn't even. I watched that game. He played one shift
I
and then he benched him, put him right
I
on the
no.
at the end of the bench.
I
Never
think I
played
saw
again.
somebody say he played like a total of like. Hold on. I remember. I
No,
remember
I watched
watching.
that game. If he played another shift, I'd be surprised. I watched that game, never saw him again.
Uh,
Sturm saw one shift, said, "Nah, I'm done." And I think that scared Donnie from bringing Patra up because you got to be careful. I think Patra's, you got to watch out with the waivers with Patra because you don't want to lose Patra, right? And I'm not sure if Patra was because he had played 2 years in the NHL on and off. I think he had to be wavered, right? So you got to be
yeah, I think so.
careful. I think they decided at that point. I think he decided, okay, I'm going to leave him down there. And remember when they brought him up was just before the Olympics when they had some injuries. They brought Patra up, played him on the fourth line, and I think it was kind of like one of those deals where Sturm knew he had to put him in there, but he didn't have to put him in there forever. But Patra played well,
He
right?
played a total of says 10 minutes 35 seconds in total NHL ice time this year.
Who?
Georgi Merkelov.
Oh, if he played 10 minutes, dude, that was the quietest 10 minutes I've ever seen in my life. I only saw him make one play. Like he literally touched the puck once when I think he had a turnover, and that was it. Sturm put him right on the bench. So maybe if he played, it was maybe he was out there scraping the ice with the ice girls because I
Well,
didn't see it.
uh,
Sorry, dude. But anyways, Patra did well in his short stint, and then they sent him back
okay.
down for the
All right.
Olympic break and never came back.
All right. So
Right?
we're getting off topic. So
Okay. Well, pull us
the
back in there, brother.
okay, right. All right. So yes, I get. I mean, I can see why Charlie's upset, and I agree with you. He's probably kind of made a decision on what he wants to do, but I still think he could be swayed back. I think he's made a decision that he's going to look at his options to leave in. I think so. But so next for the last 20 minutes of the next 20 minutes before
Yeah,
we're done here today,
yeah.
I want to go into no, we'll go into a much deeper dive of like the draft and other things later on the next
Okay.
episode. But like, I want to say, what are your top two moves that you would say the Bruins have to make this offseason with personnel? We'll talk about going to get, like who they're going to take for a pick in the draft.
Right.
But like, if you had could
But you're
only
saying
make two moves right now for this
with the
offseason, what
okay,
do you
hold
make?
on. When you say two moves, are you saying moves from the current roster, or you're saying guys that they could sign or trade
It's like
for?
guys that can sign or trade for, or
Okay.
yeah, who you trade for that person.
And you want
Yeah,
specifics, or you just want me to? Because everybody can say, "Oh, they need a 1C and a right side
I
defenseman," but
no, I want specifics. Let's because people want to know
all
specifics.
right.
They want to
Well,
be
let's lay it out
plausible.
there.
Let's not say let's go get Austin
Okay. Well,
Matthews.
so
How about a
no,
plausible
no,
trade
no.
or a plausible
Well,
signing?
here's what happened when they
Mhm.
didn't get the sixth or seventh pick from Toronto. They
I know
lost
that
some
messed us up.
ammunition,
Yeah, that messed us up.
but But if Charlie's done, if he's really done, that hurts this team. But
Okay, well
maybe,
let's do it
maybe.
one or the other because
Okay.
let's do one without because I
Okay.
get
We're only
confused
talking.
where you're gonna
All
go.
right.
Let's go one
Yeah.
without, and then the next episode we can do one with if he's gonna leave because that's two totally different scenarios, right?
All
So
right.
let's
Well,
do
okay.
one if
So they
he's
need.
staying.
Okay. Listen. They need to go get a 1C. So again, if Robert Thomas is still being dangled by St. Louis, you got to
Yeah,
give up the assets for it, right?
right.
I
There's a
think
lot
you
of
got to do
assets.
it. You got to do the assets.
Without going too deep,
But
what do you think? Because we know what we've heard of what they wanted.
yeah.
What do you think is a reasonable, not a fucking, excuse me,
Well,
but
you
not
know what they
a
wanted. They wanted.
right
Hold on. They wanted Fraser Minton, and it sounds like they
Castaway
wanted Fraser Minton,
and
Castelik,
and
and a
what two
first round
firsts
pick,
of one
and,
first? It was one
and or
first, right?
two firsts.
No, it
Yeah,
was one first. It was a first round pick, and
right.
I think that's what it was. A first round pick, Casty and Fraser. I believe
Yeah,
that's what
something
it was.
along those
Yeah,
lines. Something along those lines. Which the Bruins weren't going to move off of Fraser Minton, so
right.
that was a non-starter. But they could
So
have maybe dangled Hagens in there if they wanted to.
So,
Um,
what propose if you're saying Rob Thomas? So Rob Thomas is your first move that you say you really should make. That should be the number one priority to
no,
try and get.
okay.
Right? Is that what you're saying? Because I
But as
think
far as the
so.
guys
I
that
think
are
the
out
number
there,
one priority. if you can do
If
it.
hold on. That should be, but if you can't, then what do you pivot to
Right.
next?
That's okay, but let's
Elias
start. So the
Pettersson?
first, so that's again,
Elias
I'm saying
Pettersson?
pick your first move. If you could make it, what's the first thing you try to do then? Let's say it that way. What's the first thing you try to do is Robert Thomas? Is that what we're agreeing on? Because I agree with you if that's what you're saying. The first
If
thing
he's
I
if
say,
he's hold on. Here's the thing. If the St. Louis Blues are actually gonna put him out there again,
yeah, yeah.
you know all the same teams that came after him. In
Right, I
fact,
gotta
then
come
you're
after him. Well, you're probably gonna have
well,
more.
yeah, but now LA has a lot of money because
Right,
Kopitar is retired. They'll probably take a shot at him.
right.
Now,
Okay.
whether or not they have the assets, do the Bruins have the assets? I think that's let's be honest. Like they're gonna have to empty the cupboard. Now, do I feel like Robert Thomas suddenly makes this team a legit team? Absolutely. If Charlie stays
Yes.
and Pasta stays,
Right.
that guy fills a
Right.
need that literally makes this team now
I
suddenly two
think
lines deep.
I think if both those guys stay and Robert Thomas did, that changes a big part of this team, a big need
Oh,
of
yep,
true number one center. But the question is, like you were saying, if if let's just start arguing because there's going to be so many
right.
teams we don't know for sure.
Yeah,
I think what gets it done, I'm guessing, I think Lorai is part of that deal. I think a prospect, maybe it's Zellers if you're lucky, maybe it's Higgins. I don't know
I think it'd
if
be.
Lorai and
I'm sure they
Higgins.
would lean that
I
way.
think Lorai and Higgins and a future first is enough. I think after that you're going too much. I think after that you're going too much giving away Laura and Higgins
Well,
and a future
think
first.
about, but think, but think about what I mean. Detroit was willing to give up more than that. They were going to give up two prospects and two first round picks, and St. Louis still didn't pull the trigger.
Yeah,
They
but
were somehow
wait, there's a
waiting
difference
on some
between
magical
a prospect and Lorai. I know Lorai has had his ups and downs, but he has got
right,
an upside like you wouldn't believe, and
right. He's
he's
already scored 40 points in this league. I
right.
get it.
So I don't see where 20 let's say a 2027 first round pick and Lorai and Higgins isn't enough. That it's a matter of if St. Louis
Yeah,
would be
but
interested in that. But
right,
we're
right,
only throwing.
right,
I'm
right.
just saying, is it
Because
enough?
we've
I
heard
think it will.
we heard rumors that they wanted Detroit to take Kairu's salary too,
Right, right,
and
and that's I
Detroit
think
didn't
that's
want
part of
anything
the
to do
big
with it.
deal is they're trying to get rid of Kyrou. All
I
reports are
sounds
that
like they are,
Kyrou and
which
Jim
is strange
Montgomery are
because here's
not
a guy
happy
who's
with each other.
right. But there's a thing. Here's a guy who's consistently scored 30 goals in this league. Like,
Right,
you're trying to get rid of a guy who can
but
skate and score. I know he doesn't
okay,
back check, but I mean, again, we can talk about it. But yeah, your number one thing is you've got to get a number one seed, right? Like
okay.
that.
So
If you don't do that, then you're back to square one again,
the
and
first
it's going
move
to be
we
harder
both
next year.
agree would be to try and get Robert Thomas. Now, let's for argument's sake say that you did use you got him for let's say a first round pick. What do we want to agree on? Do we want to agree it would be Higgins and Laura? Or would we
Okay,
agree
if that
two
okay,
first
but
round
if that
picks for Laura?
happens, okay, let's say that happens. Okay, then what?
Okay,
Then what?
so that's what I'm
What?
saying. So what's your next move after that? That's your first move. What's your
So
second move?
your second move is got to you
Yeah,
got to figure out whether or not are you willing to pay the price to keep Arvidsson, or do you see?
no.
Because here's the
But
thing, I
again,
think a
this is
lot
your
of people,
decision. You tell me.
I think a lot of people were thinking that the Bruins would move off of Arvidsson and slide uh, Higgins
Hagen.
into that
Yeah.
spot, and not that that's the same type of player because they're completely different players.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? I honestly, I don't think that necessarily works with the dynamic of that line, but
All right.
whatever.
Okay.
But
Next move.
anyway,
So what's the next
what
move?
I'm saying, right? But the next move is then you got to go get a right shot defenseman, or you got to replace. Well, hold on.
No, you
You
have to.
yes, yeah, the right shot defenseman is the bigger move than the winger,
Right.
but yeah,
Right,
okay,
right.
right shot.
Right shot defensive. Wingers, we got there is some talent. So okay, so second move you're saying right shot D, which I agree with also. I think the next move is a right shot D. Who
Are
is
you
it?
signing Rasmus Anderson at $9 million? Now you got
I
four defensemen making
okay.
you know almost
This,
9 million,
so you tell me what
or
is your
three,
thing?
right?
What do you think for your if you're saying the second move is a right shot D, if you got Robert Thomas, who is it? Do you try to go give up more assets for Nemec? Do you just sign Rasmus Anderson because it doesn't cost you anything and it doesn't look like he's signing with Vegas? He hasn't made any his there's nothing come out yet that he's signing with Vegas. He's told everybody up front he wasn't signing until the
Right,
season was over. So
right. So hold on. So here's the thing. Okay, here's the thing. Rasmus comes with no assets needed to send their way other
right.
than
And
money.
I think he's what, 28?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he fits in, but the thing
Hmm.
is now your defensive core has what? You've got how much is Zadorov making? Six and a half, six
Five. I
million,
think he's five. I think he's 5.
5 million.
Oh, I
Okay,
think he's
five
5. Yeah.
million for him. 5 million for him. You're paying
Let's
Charlie
let's look it up.
9.5 million. You're paying
Yeah.
Tampa 8 million. So now you're up to, oh my God, what, almost $30 million between
Let's
the
see. Zadorov
35 million,
contract.
30,
I'm
33.
looking it up. Zadorov
That's a lot of money back
is
there.
a cap hit of 5 million. Okay, Charlie is we think we said the other day was 10 or 9.5. Charlie McAvoy contract. Okay, I
Yeah,
got it right here. Charlie is an AAV of 9.5, so that's 14.5 with just those two. Let's see what
yeah.
Hampus Lindholm is. Hampus Lindholm contract. That is 6.5. So we're at 14.5 for six.
Wow,
So that's 21. That's
wow.
21 between the three of the three of them.
Yeah,
And then Aspero is not much. Aspero, I think what he just signed a 1.5, something like that.
right,
Right? No, I
right,
think it was under that. I think it was 900. So okay, so that's not much. So we're at 22.
right.
And then who else do we got? Right. So, Loki Yokiharu was like 3, which is crazy.
Oh, God. Oh
Um,
God.
and
Right,
that's it, right? Because everybody else is gone this year. They're coming
right.
from
So that's
okay.
that's a lot of money
So
tied
that's
up
you're
there.
at
Like,
25, 24 million without Erasmus Anderson, and then if he wants 9, you're at 33 million in just
right,
defense. Woo,
right,
woo.
right.
But if it makes your defense solid and it doesn't cost you any assets, I don't know. It's not a bad move.
But do those
Nimich is going to
defensemen
cost you
fit?
9 million.
Right, but do those defensemen fit your style? Like that's the other thing. Can we talk about, do they fit your what your the system that you're trying to run? Because if they don't fit the system you're trying to run, like does it make any sense? Like here's
Yeah.
the thing, Charlie McAvoy can skate and he hated the system that they were playing. It
All right.
didn't matter that how
All
good
right.
of a skater
And
or how,
this, but this conversation is about what your move is. So if you're saying it's not
because I
Rasmus
think
because
that
he doesn't fit
matters.
the system, so
But
all
but
right.
that's
But so what's your
okay,
move?
okay.
You're saying the
But
move is to fire Sturm and get a different coach? Is that your move? Because I'm asking you, give me 2 moves. What's the move? Because I think that's what you're saying. You're saying this guy, his system sucks, and we need to change the system. Okay, so tell me that. I want to know.
you
People want to
okay,
know
okay, okay.
what to do. What are your thoughts on what the team should do? I'm saying 2 moves for right now. We can talk about other moves later, but what's your 2 top priority? I mean, if you want to get technical, I say the number one move is I like Sturm. I think he's a good person. I think some of his stuff is very smart. But if the opportunity to go get Cassidy back, I think that's number one. Go get Cassidy back. I know people hated him, but he's a winner and he knows this.
Right,
He knows this team. He knows the league. He can
right,
outcoach anybody.
right. I'm not going to disagree with you there because I feel like we saw him do it with Vegas, right?
Yeah.
He understood what happened to the Bruins against a team that played bully hockey,
Yep.
right? And he said, "I'm not gonna get bullied again." And he took a Vegas team that had tons of talent and added the bigger guys. He sprinkled in size and toughness. And so when
Okay.
they
So,
played Florida, what happened? Florida punched them, then they
right.
punched back,
Right.
and then suddenly
Oh
Florida
yeah.
wanted to play hockey. It was
Right.
so
Right. Right.
funny.
It was a
Suddenly
change.
Florida's complaining about how dirty Vegas was.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right?
But so
It was
is
the
that your
funniest
number
thing we
two
ever
move?
saw.
Is that your number 2 move to go get
Oh,
Cassidy? Tell me number one is Robert Thomas, number two is go get Cassidy. Is that what you're saying? You got to give me an answer here. What is
oh,
it? Because
I
honestly,
hey,
I like
I
that. I
like
think I say, hey, let's do that all day. Fire
I know.
Sweeney, give me Cassidy back. All right.
Well, but hold on. That's really, come on. That's really what would have to happen for him, because they will not
Or
allow him to fire a coach, right? You do
I,
realize that after what happened with Cassidy and then
yeah, yeah.
Montgomery, he has no runway anymore. He can't do that. So that would be them firing him and letting the new guy come in and hire it. And if
Which
it's
we both agree. We
Chara,
think it's Chara
which
that's going to be groomed. That's being groomed to be take over as GM. I
doesn't it
mean,
seem like it?
looks
And
like it. I mean,
Jamie Langenbrunner got told and
yeah,
that he wasn't that spot is taken. In other words,
yeah,
Evan Gold left. He thought he was sliding in Evan Gold's spot, and essentially they told him, "Well, no." And Jamie said, "You know what? Okay, I'm out." And we now know they haven't announced it that's
yeah.
what
Even that's
Chara's going to
nothing.
be doing,
That's what it looks like. Yeah.
but that's the inside is that's why Jamie left is that he was told that spot's already taken.
Yeah,
and
I wonder. I
he
mean, that's what
was,
we're all guessing here, but that's what it
yeah,
looks like, right?
yeah,
It
yeah.
feels that way. I'm just saying, man. I think the number one move, and like I said,
If that happens,
Sturm is a
if that
good
happens,
dude.
hold
He
on.
seems,
If Chara really is the guy coming in because Charlie brought him in, then you know Sweeney's days are numbered, right? And
yeah,
Cam will get sunset. Cam will
yeah.
get the
They'll laterally
the
move him
honorary
to something
title.
nice, and right,
Yeah,
they'll make him the assistant
yeah,
to hockey
yeah,
operations for the
yeah,
Boston Bruins.
yeah,
I don't know,
yeah,
like
yeah,
his social relations or something.
yeah,
They'll make sure he's still in the company, still
yeah,
has a title, so he can
yeah,
still be there and still be
yeah,
Cam Neely. But yes, he will
yeah,
not be making decisions. I don't. They'll
yeah,
never
because
fire him, but
no,
they'll make him
but
something that just gives him a
but
title.
you do realize Cam won't be telling fucking Chara nothing, right? Like
Nothing,
that,
nothing, nothing.
there'll be no this is how we're doing things. No, there'd be nothing like that, right?
Yeah.
It'll be like go over there and sit in
Well,
your
you got to
chair.
remember, I think Cam's 60 years old. I mean, he's
I know.
not a
And
young
again,
pup
I love
anymore.
Cam.
Me
Cam
too.
was the man,
One of my favorite players. Yeah.
but the game is not the same anymore,
Right.
right? And honestly, this all went downhill when they screwed up the 15 draft. And I
Oh my
think they
God. Let's
know
not talk. That's a whole other episode to talk about the
right,
2015
right,
draft. Okay.
right.
That's a whole other episode. But okay. So we're laying it down right now. The top moves, we say, what is number one? Go get Cassidy. Fire Sweeney, go get Cassidy. Is that number one? Or number two is
Well,
Robert Thomas?
you love that idea, don't you? You love
Yes,
that
I
idea.
love. I never thought you would hear the words come out of my mouth that I want Cassidy back, but I have realized he's the best coach in the league, if not the best. He's right there with Cooper, I think. Okay, I
Right,
mean it's
right,
tough for me because I one thing that sold it for me on Cassidy is he was not afraid to make the changes when he realized he was wrong about
right,
something. He's not
right.
afraid. He's not afraid to say,
Right.
okay, that's not working. Let's do this. I
But
like that.
there's also the people side of things. And what
Okay,
happens is
he can be aggressive.
you can only tell people the truth so much, right? Like people want to live in their little bubble. So unfortunately, when you hit them with the truth in the face over and over
Right?
again,
If
and this is
Beagle
what
gets us
happened.
a
If
cup in
Vegas,
5 or 6 years,
hold on,
nobody cares.
right?
Nobody
And let's
cares.
be honest. If Vegas hadn't won a cup, right? But if Vegas hadn't won
Right.
that cup,
He
he'd still
probably
be
would have
there
been.
because they'd still be working their ass off to win
Oh,
it.
okay. They were
And
trying to
honestly,
get it. Right, right.
those guys, let's be honest, those guys didn't want to hear it anymore, not because they didn't know he was right, but because they
Right.
would just wanted to get to the playoffs and then they would turn it on. That's
Right,
the
right.
attitude they had. They didn't bring in enough guys from the outside who hadn't won it enough yet.
Right.
His leaders let him down in the room.
Yeah.
What we found out recently was that never happened in Boston because now
Right.
the truth came out.
Oh,
We
yeah.
heard it
You keep hearing
we
more and
heard it
more
from
people.
Patrice. We
Yeah.
heard it from
Pasta.
Pasta. They didn't want him to go.
No, I thought for sure because all the rumors you heard when he got let go was that everybody was upset with him in the room. But now you're seeing it almost behind the B and then the other thing.
Well, he
Where
went to right,
Bergeron's like I love him. He's helped me.
right,
He's so great. Pasta's like he
right.
changed me, changed who I was, made me a better player. I
Yeah,
mean, you're
we
hearing
know
it all
now.
over the
Right,
place.
we know now what happened. He went to Sweeney, said, "I want these type of guys. This is the guys." He might have been
We're
very
making this
specific.
assumption.
This is
This is
who I
yeah,
want.
yeah.
No, but I mean, I've heard rumors from guys that are still in the
Okay,
league,
but
like
we
seeing
have to
stuff
say
like
that it's a rumor. We're
that's.
not 100% sure, but yeah, yeah.
But no,
We're
that's well, no. But the reality was he did say it when he left afterwards. Is that he was not allowed to have any say in personnel.
mhm.
And then they got into fights. They literally, him and Don Sweeney would get in this where Sweeney would call up a guy that he didn't want because he would ask for a different guy. And then he would call up a different guy and essentially tell him, play this guy.
Well, and then
And
I did see, I
he
think his
wouldn't
exit
play him.
interview was with Haggerty, and he said that, and shout out to Pucks with Hags, I really like that
Yeah.
podcast. Um, is that
Yeah.
I'm
It's a good
pretty sure
podcast.
it was him on his exit interview with Cassidy, and he said that he was told by Sweeney that he was sometimes too aggressive in the way he um, talked to the players. I'm like, well, man, he's a
Right.
coach. You got to be aggressive.
Yeah.
Listen, dude, when you're not doing your job, to do your job. This is
Yeah.
just stupid, But I get what you're
Exactly.
saying. If they wouldn't have won a cup, and I think the Bruins were so close. We were right there so many times with Cassidy. I I
They
get
got
it. They
bullied.
wanted
They
to,
got
yeah.
bullied in that St. Louis
But I
series,
think
and
I think that's why he changed a little bit of his strategy when he went to Vegas. He's
he
like,
did.
okay, that didn't
He
work,
did.
and I like that about a coach that will say, hey, this
I
didn't
do
work.
too.
We had to take changes.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I truly believe in all my heart, everything I've watched a fan for 40 years of my life,
Right.
48 years, but 40 years
Right.
that I can remember, is that
Yeah.
I think Cassidy can get us that cup. I think Cassidy can
Right.
get us that cup in the next 5 years. I really believe it. I don't see
Right.
Sturm doing it. I
And
like
here's
Sturm. I don't think he can do it.
well, I don't want to go that far because I honestly like I think Sturm is a smart guy. I think what we started to see was they kind of started to adapt a little bit and have a little bit different system as the season went on, and
Mm-hmm.
it started to get better as the guys kind of got more into what he was trying to do. But I really feel like and he said this, right? He was actually implementing a system that he thought that they could run, but what he found out was he didn't have the personnel, and they just him and Sweeney were not on the same page, and they started to get back to that. And you heard them. All we heard last year was piss and vinegar, and now suddenly
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
hearing
yeah.
still speed and skill. Like suddenly that went
Well,
away for a while.
I'm not gonna lie. I like the idea of
Yeah,
having the piss and vinegar of Sweeney, and I think we did get some of that, and that's okay. You need some
yeah,
of that, but the whole
yeah.
team can't be that. You need a mix of
Right,
everything, right? You
right.
need your skill guys. You need speed. You need some of the piss and
And
vinegar too, but you got to have a little
right.
bit of everything, or it's not gonna work.
And this goes back to hold on, and this goes back to guys understanding their role, right?
Yeah,
Like that Bruins
no gets
team,
his
and
role.
right, that Bruins team from 2009 to 2013, 14, or 13, 14, or whatever, 13, right, where they went to the Cup again. That team was built on every line kind of had a role, and they weren't all like 200-foot players. David Krejci, he's responsible in his own. He's not Patrice Bergeron, right?
Right,
Like
right,
again, people forget like he was. It took him a while to figure it out, right? You know, as tough and as hard hitting as Lucic was, he wasn't exactly like the
right.
best in his own zone. Like people forget the first line had a job, and their job was to generate offense. Then you had the second line, Patrice's line, again, was a very responsible, but they generated offense because they had some very good talent.
Oh my
And then
God, they
you had
had
the
amazing.
third line. Their third line was meant to go out and check, right? Not score, just to check. And if whatever they got was a bonus. And the fourth line was to go out and thump, right? Like that's what they did. And they also shut teams down. And that's why you saw all four lines
Okay,
were playing
all right,
14 plus minutes a night, right? Like they were all getting,
okay,
because
we
you
got to
could
get.
put them out.
I
But I'm
get
just saying, like,
it.
all I'm
But
saying about,
so
I'll say this
he's
about Sturm, right? Just last thing about Sturm.
okay.
I don't think he's a stupid guy. I don't think he's a
No,
bad
not at
coach.
all.
I
I don't think he's a bad
what
coach
I
either.
so, but this was his first year, and I'm willing to give him another year and say, let's see. But I think what needs to happen now is there needs to be communication. They need to get him and Charlie back together on the same page. And honestly, they need to figure out who's going to be the captain. And if it's Charlie, then you name him the captain. You make amends, make a big deal about it. Kumbaya, whatever. Go out, and if he wants a small, fast defenseman to play with him on the left side, then go get that guy for him, and then
Yeah,
go find
yeah.
another Aspero to play on the right side on the next line.
Well, it's
You know what I
hard to
mean?
find Aspiros for that
I
that
know,
nobody ever
I
heard of
know,
and never had played a game
I,
in the NHL. Spends 2 games down in
I
AHL,
know.
and for us for the Bruins, and then he's wow,
Right,
great defensive with a super high plus minus, which I know isn't the end all be all, but
and
it's
you know
pretty
why?
amazing.
But you know why? Because he plays a
Found
simple
money,
game.
as Evan
He's not
Barnowski says.
scared. He was always the first. But you watch, right? Like even this is where Peak and Yoki Haru like fell down for the Bruins is
Hmm.
when teams would just chip the puck because they're playing the 1-4 or the 1-3-1 at times, and teams would have to chip the puck over them. Peak, he can't skate enough to even get back there, and Yoki Haru was just lazy about it. He would watch the puck over his head and still get beat. And honestly, this is where the Bruins had a hard time, is because here they are racing to get pucks. If they would get back there, like, and again, I know people didn't like Grizzly, but that's the kind of guy. Every now and again, you got to have that guy out there to just go collect pucks and start to go in the other way and
Yeah,
getting teams to have to defend. But what happened was is they get stuck in their own end, and then what we get stuck in there for 30 seconds. Now we're gassed. Now we're just throwing pucks up to nowhere, up the wall, because our guys are
yeah.
flying. Like again, I love Pasta, but flying the zone when two other guys also flew the zone, and now you got your defenseman with two guys in his face, and he's just throwing it away. This has got to be the thing that had to be addressed as well, right? Like,
Right. Right.
you can't do it,
Okay.
right?
Right. So okay. So I get it. So we're saying you're saying that Sturm you think is could work, but there are
So
some things
hold
that
on.
need to be changed.
Right.
We're
So
thinking
let's
back to
let's
that.
change this. Let's change. The first thing that needs to happen is they got to get Pasta and Charlie back into the part where they're happy and want to come back to play
Right.
hockey again
Okay. Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
Boston
Agreed.
Bruins.
Agreed. Agreed.
That's
Agreed.
the first thing. And then two, then you go out and get your center. And if you see, here's the thing. Again, I don't think Don Sweeney has any rope to fire to Sturm, so I think it's like it's
Well,
unreal to expect it. But think about this. Cassidy's getting paid for a whole nother year. I could see Cassidy sitting out another year. And
yeah,
then
we
next
talked
year,
about that. I
if the
agree
Bruins
with
have
that.
another lackadaisical season where it doesn't look like there's cohesion or growth, then you move off of Sturm and you say, hey, we gave him a chance, right?
Well, we're going to wrap this up here shortly because we're a
Yeah.
little over an hour. But I
Yeah.
think you're
Sorry.
right, and I think there's a good possibility that that does happen because remember, as the Vegas holds Cassidy's rights, and if they don't want to let
Right.
him talk to anybody, they're paying him. So they can
Right.
for
Right.
the whole next season,
Right.
they can be like, listen, you're just going to go do some
Well,
analyzing. We're not letting you out of the contract.
right.
They can do that. I watched this whole thing about the
Oh,
contract
they
rules.
absolutely
So
can
what
because
they
they've
might do
right,
because they're thinking, well, we don't want him in the division. They know Edmonton
right,
wants him, right? So
right,
they might just be like, nope, 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 and
right.
he might go do the NHL analyst stuff. He's already been on TV.
Oh,
We saw him talking to Pasta.
absolutely.
So maybe he does
Yeah.
that for the year. And you're right. They give Sturm a year's rope, and if Sturm don't do nothing, it looks like it's making a
And
difference.
and here's the thing. By that time, Don Sweeney might not be in charge anymore,
Right.
and it
And
could be an
Cassidy's already said
easy.
how much he loves Boston. Like he
Yeah,
loves Boston.
yeah, yeah. But let's be honest. I feel like
Right. Sweeney's got to go to
it's
get Cassidy in there.
yeah,
Okay.
and
Okay.
that makes sense. It could all and this all could be lining up
Yeah,
for
we all
Chara.
just
Chara takes over as president. Maybe Bergeron becomes the general manager.
yeah,
They
yeah.
bring in they bring in Cassidy as a coach, and now suddenly in the in the very peak of Pasta's career at 31 years old or 30
I
years 30 right 31 he'll be next summer. Suddenly he's ready to have his big swan song, and they make a push, But again,
yeah,
you got to have the number one center, so that's got to happen as well.
right.
So Pasta, Charlie becoming, brought back on board and get the gang all back together that everybody's happy and wants to play hockey here in Boston again, and then go get your number one C. And suddenly, I think you could patch some holes on the defense
So,
and still be
uh,
okay, right?
final thoughts here. I say that yes, the Bruins outperformed what we thought they were going to do. I'm grateful. I'm
Yeah.
grateful. Mostly, the biggest thing I'm grateful for this season is Swayman showed why he deserved the money, and he's an elite goaltender. That to me is what I'm most thankful for out of this season is that we saw Swayman be Swayman, and we know okay, we got a goalie. We have a goalie
So
because man, that was
so
scary last
here,
year.
well,
Okay,
here's what I would also say. Here's what I will also say, right? Buffalo is an elite offensive talent team, right?
mhm.
And when the Bruins defense and goaltending were, on the same page and everybody was doing their job, you saw them shut them down, right? It was when they got away from it a little bit, and of course Zadorov got
Right,
hurt and
right,
couldn't
right, right.
quite skate anymore. But no, let me finish because I think that you always build through the center, right? Your goalie, defense, and you got to have a stud. And they got that. They have a stud goalie, they have a stud defenseman in Charlie. Now you got to get your stud center. If that aligns, you're now in the mix for a Stanley Cup. But until they get the number one C, or again, if they go out and get Robert Thomas and then Charlie decides to leave, yes, you have Hampus, yes, but those are not the same caliber guy
Okay.
at that point in the career. Charlie is in his prime, and we've seen it. If he wants to be the guy that can literally make a difference every game, and
Yeah.
he's happy, he will do that.
Right. All right. I'm sorry. So what I'm
You
saying,
need
I
that.
was just saying, my final thought for the season was that I
Well,
was grateful to see Swayman
yeah,
show that he's Swayman. All right, because we're gonna wrap
I
it up
agree.
here, and then we're gonna
All right.
right.
Well,
So I mean,
my thing was to see the growth. Well, we saw Minton, we saw Fraser
yeah,
Minton, we saw
yeah, yeah.
Husnudinov, and I think that's fantastic because I think when that kid Husnudinov, he's going to go and take English lessons this summer.
Oh yeah, yeah.
He,
He said in an interview that that was one of his biggest problems is communicating in the locker room, communicating to the coaches. That was part of his. I couldn't believe it when I saw he said that in his exit interview. That was one of his biggest problems was communicating because he didn't speak English well.
right, right. I think honestly that was my takeaway that this was a successful year for those two guys. You know that they and you can throw Aspero in there as well because I now think they've as long as he doesn't have a sophomore slump, right? Like I think Aspero's game is pretty solid. That I don't think
Yeah,
that's going to happen next year. I think
no,
just plug him
especially because
in,
he's
plug
defensive
him in.
defenseman. It's hard
He
to yeah.
really is, right? He
Uh,
really is. He does. He never played. He never. He always played within himself. Again, that's what I was very grateful to see the growth of Minton and Hushnudinov, and I really feel like there's so much more to those guys, and
Oh,
that's
dude,
great.
I think so too. I think
Now,
Marat's. I predict. I'm saying it now. If everybody can call me on it later, I predict Marat becomes a bigger part of this team next year. I think Marat is going to be somebody that you are going to in a few years go. Wow, we got that guy from nothing, and look what he
yeah,
has done for this team. I like
yeah,
Fraser Minton too. Don't get me wrong. I think Fraser's going to be a solid two-way center, but for some
yep,
reason, I see something in Marat that makes me go, there's a possibility of everything. That kid has got a little bit of all of it, and I think if he puts it all together, he could be a stud like we haven't seen in a long time. I really feel
right,
this way. I could be wrong, and then
right.
I'll put my foot in my mouth
he
later. But
has he has all the tools, right? He's a world class
yeah,
skater. He's got good hands. He competes like nobody's business, right? Didn't
oh
matter
yeah, he's
where
fighting
he
for
went.
everything, fights for every inch.
Right, right. All right. Last thing I would say is that the things that kind of disappointed me about this season
Oh yeah,
was not seeing more of the kids that they were developing in Providence. That to me is like the my most disappointing, right? That
yeah,
we didn't see more of that. I
yeah,
wanted to see
yeah.
more pop. I wanted
See,
to
see some
see,
from Pasha.
I
I
wanted to
wanted to
see
see
them give.
DiPietro up there, but
I did too. I
but
think DiPietro is an
we'll
NHL
get
goaltender. I
into
know some people don't think so.
uh
I talked to my friends who are one of them's an AHL goalie coach, and he has reservations about DiPietro's game. He thinks he could be a backup, but again, he thinks that we're overhyping him.
But
I
that's what
won't
we
get into
need,
it, but
a cheap,
yeah,
affordable backup. I don't need
I,
a superstar goalie. I need
right,
a good,
right,
solid backup. And if that's him and he
right,
saves us $2 million a year difference from what we're paying, that
right, right.
cap space is important these days. You know what I mean?
Well, it may not be as important going forward the next couple of years. So, but I get what you're saying. I really feel like it comes down to just once again that they don't show that the prospects coming in that you have
Yeah.
any chance of getting a shot.
Yeah.
Like nobody wants to be handed a job, but you got to give them the chance to audition, right?
And
Like
we're
that's I
gonna get
think
into
where they've yeah.
more of the
So anyways,
prospect pool.
that's where I was happy and excited for, and that was also what I was disappointed for.
So I think on one of our next videos, we're going to talk about the prospects that we already have, prospects that maybe the Bruins could draft for, or
Yeah,
and I want to get into what we should do with those draft picks. Like, should we make trades? Should we move up? Should
yeah,
and then probably within that time frame, we'll also talk about who we should draft if they keep the 26th pick. Yeah,
yeah.
or 20. What do we got? 23rd pick, 24th pick. Well, I'll look it up. Something like that.
I
Who
think
should
it's
we draft,
23rd.
or who do we think is going to be in
Yeah,
that area to draft? Right.
yeah.
I'd
Awesome.
like to
Great
talk
way to
about
talk
that in the
about
next
that too.
video. Yeah.
Yep.
Um. So, that's probably going to be the one of them. And then again, I want to get into more of set. I think another video is going to be like, who should we try to go after for center? Because we agreed a center and the right defenseman are the two top priorities,
Right.
right? We can agree
Yeah,
on that.
agreed.
So
Agreed.
we
Yeah,
should do a video on just who are the center possibilities that we can go after, not just Robert Thomas, but other possibilities,
sure.
and
There's
who's the
other
right shot
possibilities out there.
that we can
Yeah,
plausible. I love having these
yeah,
dream scenarios, but I like to talk
sure.
about plausible,
Right,
possible trades and
right,
reality,
right,
right? What
right.
maybe not,
Maybe,
you know.
right. Maybe we can even talk about some of the maybe potential candidates from within, right?
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
exactly too. Like Blanar. Like right.
he's right. You got
He's
Bernard, you
got a
got
couple of
Pedersen,
years
who
away.
dropped
We
in the
got
second
Pedersen.
round. Right. You got a couple other guys. I mean, here's the other thing. They didn't even try to bring up Ty Gallagher,
Yeah.
from the AHL to
Well, see
even
this.
give him a look,
This is what I'm saying. For the next video, we definitely need to talk about
Yeah,
prospects. The next one video is
yeah,
prospects, and the draft, and who we should go with the
yeah,
draft. All right.
yeah.
Well,
Sounds good,
again,
man.
This is Two Bros Bruins Talk podcast, and please like and subscribe.
Yeah, man. Love you, bro.
Love you, bro.